So one thing I should say is that also, two of those, I mean, that's pretty out there, pretty distinctive, pretty big ambition. Adidas aren't trying to launch, trying to break a record to run a marathon. All the travel sites like whether that's Skyscanner or TripAdvisor or any of the big Expedia, that they're not trying to launch new filters and trying to train and accredit hotels for the LGBTQ plus community. So I mean, they're both of those are really out there trying to do something different that are going to get themselves known about. So so I just had 5 key principles here just to quickly run through, which somebody smart once told me, and one was have a really just brutally simple idea. 2, try and dramatize the product benefit. So don't just do something that's cool but utterly unrelated to the product or service you're selling, because it's very hard for people to remember it, but try and kind of dramatize the product benefit. Engage and interest people. Treat people with a bit of intelligence. And I think that's really important, because people aren't stupid, and I think it's important that you don't just shout at people. Give them the credit, and then reward them for spending time in your advertising. And that might be just through being a bit funny or being charming, or make that experience of watching a 5-second GIF or a short TikTok video, or on YouTube where you have to wait 5 seconds before you can skip now. Do give them something to make it a little bit rewarding for them having spent time with you. So that was just a very quick count through in half an hour or whatever time we had. I just wanted to try and give you just a bit of background of maybe thinking slightly differently about advertising, or how agencies and people brands get to different ideas. And it's not necessarily a rule book, it's more of I suppose a framework or a way of thinking about it, which I thought just very quickly might help you think about brands differently. And maybe when you come up against, especially this Christmas, there's loads of Christmas ads that are going to be launching in the next few weeks. It's interesting to think about that, think about consumer insights, what's going on in their world. I suspect lots of work right now will focus on the fact that, money's scarce, we're living in lockdown, and that can have an effect on how Christmas is going to happen and unfold. So look out for that. Think about, how you can create a distinctive brand, and then think about how people do that in a really kind of compelling and interesting way. So the last thing I wanted to touch on was just how agencies and production work, because there's lots of different jobs. I mean, a ton of different jobs. And I just thought I'd go through those very quickly. And maybe as a follow-up, if you guys are interested, I can talk more about those. But within a creative agency, so advertising agency, and it was funny, I was watching, there's a new series on Netflix, Emily in Paris, where she's a young influencer and she works in a marketing agency. So there's a little bit of that goes on. I mean, that's not really like a real world example, but it touches on some of the stuff that that brands do. But there's some of the different roles I just wanted to sort of mention, because you just no reason why you would know about these. But one is the creative. So there are creative teams whose sole job it is to come up with an idea and write a script, or come up with a sort of a concept or a PR stunt. There's a group of people called strategic planning, and they tend to be really focused at the front end of the process. They'll write a creative brief and work with the client on their business problems, but they're the ones who will look at a lot of data, look at a lot of trend analysis, understand culturally what's going on in the world right now, and really understand people and what makes them tick. That's really their job. And we'll spend time in research groups, focus groups, maybe talking to people, understand what's on their mind. I mean, it might be that, for example, at the moment, education's a massive thing. You know, a load of people who have just done their A-levels have had results that have been really badly handled by the government. People who've gone to university have are probably doing all their lectures online. You know, that's going to have a real influence on people. And if you were trying to connect or talk to someone who was the age of 18 and maybe 21, there's some really big things going on in their lives that would actually have a real big impact on how they're interacting with the world and what's on their mind right now with their decisions. So a planner might go deep into that if they were thinking about that. There's another role, account management, which sounds like accounts and finance, but really it's about being one of those persons who deals with the client and makes sure that projects happen, briefs get taken, things move, and momentum's created. And a lot of the skills there are, you know, an entrepreneurial mindset. You know, maybe there's a brilliant idea that needs to happen, and it's difficult because there's a whole, you know, maybe you need to speak to the government, maybe you need to get special planning permission to do something. So these people are out there making it happen, hustling, and they tend to be, as I said, sort of quite entrepreneurial, very organized people who like to get stuff done. There's roles like finance. So an advertising agency or a creative agency is a business. So there'll be financial roles, making sure people get paid, suppliers get paid. So there's roles there. Project management, they're the people that are making sure that they'll work very closely with account management, with creatives, making sure that the creative team have come up with the work they need to on time, and that they can, it's actually feasible what the creatives want to do. And that takes you into another role called producers, which are the people who actually then start to bring it to life. So someone might have a great idea on a piece of paper. How do you actually make it? Is it a script that needs a production company to go and film it and shoot it? Is it an installation or an art piece, or is it a PR stunt where, you know, things need to get built or made, or, you know, flyers need to be printed? So the producers do a lot of that. Art buying is another it's quite interesting role, because they're the ones who actually work with photographers and their agents, and they will actually, art buying sounds strange, but it could be anything from stock images that already exist and securing the rights for those, or it might be commissioning a photo shoot. And then a couple of other roles which are becoming much more important these days. So data analysts, obviously we've got huge amounts of data from people's search behavior online. They tend to work very closely with strategic planners, but that's a really kind of increasingly important field within the agency, as people want to understand human behavior and clients want to understand human behavior. One of the biggest predictors of brand success is actually Google searches. So these are the people who might, along with the researchers, the final role I put down there, will actually be looking for those sorts of trends. And a lot of that can be done online through data analysts. And then on the other side of things, in production, so very often an agency won't produce stuff in-house because it's expensive to have all of that skill set in the building if you don't need it day in, day out. So there'll be a third-party production, which depending on what you're doing, whether it's commissioning photography or film, and that could be film, that could be a 60-second TV ad, or it could just be a 5-second GIF. There's lots of similar roles here where these are the folks who actually make stuff and shoot stuff. So there's a lot of production roles in here, which might be the director, so the person who might take a script or an idea and have the vision to bring it to life. The producer, there's a producer on the production side who budgets, makes stuff happen, gets people to turn up on the day when they're supposed to, and does all the planning for any production. There's the photographer or DOP, director of photography, but the photographer, the person who actually wants set the shots up, have the vision for it, and create the film with the camera person. Once you've shot that, there's editors, so the people who actually take footage that's been shot and actually will splice it together to tell the story. With that, there's sound. So there's people whose job it is to actually do, sound effects, make sure the sound balance is right, especially when it comes to music search, overlaying music, and then voiceovers. There's jobs out there where people's careers are made doing as voiceover artists. And then other jobs which are super creative and really interesting. There's jobs in music search. So if you love music, there's jobs there where you may get you may work with a team where you actually get to choose and put on the music that goes on a particular piece of advertising. And think about it, if you get a chance to have a look at some of the work which is in the film here. There's sound effects, but there's also the power of music is so important in creating a feeling from people. The other thing that's really important is obviously styling. That could be wardrobe, it can be clothing, it could be hair and makeup. What people are wearing is so important culturally, and how that makes a brand feel contemporary and fresh. So there's, if you love fashion, there's brilliant roles there. And then the other is in production, set designs and interior decorators, for example. What's the styling? So there's a lot of roles there. And then hair and beauty as well. It could be hands. You might be, and this is before you even got into sort of models and actors. But people's job it might be to have do hair and makeup, hand makeup, especially for a lot of beauty brands. It's really important. And then I've also got on here animators. So increasingly, with huge amount of work is being done rather than being shot in camera and filmed. People are doing a lot of work with animation, and that's a huge field which is growing. So with that, I think I've probably spoken for a long time, but I just wanted to end on a quote from which I thought was brilliant, which was, "Do interesting things, and interesting things will happen." Because I think it kind of resonated with me, and it's really hard right now when we're all on lockdown and a lot of our choices are limited. But reading about interesting stuff, expanding our minds, is something which I thought was really powerful, because I'm trying to do this now, do more things, and do more interesting things, and how that can open doors for us, I think is very powerful. So I just wanted to end on that, and really just rest of the time, there isn't much, but just for any questions that you guys might have.
No, thank you very much, Chris. Amazing. Just before we go into the questions, if anyone is really interested in getting into the advertising industry, or would would like more advice, I'm sure Chris is open to kind of having a chat with them if they wanted to. So please let me know. Chris is here, and me and him have a few conversations, and he's open to helping anybody that wants to. But yeah, if anyone has any questions now, feel free to write them in the chat box, and I will ask away. Or if not, then I guess we'll leave it for now. But I'll give you like a couple of minutes if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, definitely.
One question: if someone wanted to kind of get into the industry, what kind of what would they need to study, or what kind of qualifications would they need, or anything like that?
So I think it depends on the role you're doing, and there are specific within the role. So I guess one of the things I would say is that if you're interested in any of the roles that I flashed up on screen, and by the way, they're not exhaustive, but they're just a good selection of them. There's probably different ways into them. So one of the things to say is that a lot of the production roles, you can find your way in through doing a job like being a runner. And a runner is basically, people will very often take, for any production, people to come on set, get experience, and find yourself just talking to different people and just helping out, just generally, and seeing where doors open there. But really, there are specific courses. So for example, if you want to do hair and makeup, there are specific courses that you can take to get into that. And if you want to be a creative, again, there's courses to get into that field. There are some roles like account management, which is how I got in. We sometimes call it client service, where they still like people to go to university, but they don't have a specific degree that you need to have done. But I do think that, again, whether it's work experience or volunteering, a lot of companies now, they do paid work experience. In fact, I'm not sure you're actually allowed to do voluntary work experience anymore. But again, if that's something anyone's interested in, I'm very happy to try and help or try and speak to some people about getting some sort of work experience before you either make the jump to go straight into it. So again, I don't know how old people are, what stage they're at, whether they've still at school or left school or thinking about going on to college or university. But I think right now there's a real push to try and get much more diversity into the advertising and communications industry. And I think there's a recognition that we need to change the way that people get recruited, and we need to open more doors. So I think anything like paid work experience or trying to set up, whether it's interviews or meeting people, making those connections. So for example, there might be an apprenticeship with someone who does hair and makeup, or someone who works in a sound studio, the ability to shadow or follow. It's something which I'd be very, if someone's serious about it and they're interested, I'd be very up for trying to help people find a way in. Sorry, that's a really long way of answering your question.
No, amazing.
But it's just trying to say that it's probably merits a bigger conversation, but there's definitely options in there to try and give people a chance to get exposure to get into the business.
Okay, someone else has asked, what's the most effective way to advertise a new brand or company, in your opinion?
Okay, great question. So I think the first thing I would say is always go back to how is it going to be different to what's out there? And I would say the most effective way is trying to find something that feels fresh and different. And I saw something the other day. I don't know if you guys did, but Ocean Spray, who are the cranberry juice maker. I don't know if we get it here, but it's massive in the States. There's a TikTok video that went out with a guy who was skateboarding, and he was started singing along to a Fleetwood Mac song and took a swig of Ocean Spray, and it was unpaid, and he just did it. And then Fleetwood Mac came around and said they've had 10 million views of their song. Ocean Spray have said it wasn't an ad, but it's been the biggest thing for them because it just got so many views. It caught people's imagination, and it's been the most successful in business terms. It's sold more Ocean Spray than anything they've ever done in their history. So I think there is no secret sauce, but they did it, and they didn't even do it. But I think that is the holy grail, which is we'd always say, try and make your brand well known. There's this term salience, which is basically just like being top of mind, get people talking about it. So the best way you can launch a brand is try and get people talking about you in whatever way that is.
Perfect. And then that's perfect. Question for myself. What's one thing that you know now that you wish you knew before you kind of started in the industry?
Excellent question. I think when I started in the industry, I never knew how much it was always going to be changing, which is a good thing. And I wish I'd known that, because I think I would have thought it was more exciting than it was. I think the biggest thing is that the if you like, the execution will always change because there's so many new platforms. When you think about, Facebook now feels like it's very established, and yet that was only launched in 2007, which is 12 years old. When you think about the history of time, TikTok's a couple of years old, and the things that we can do on those platforms and we're being encouraged to do is always changing. And I think that's really exciting. And the biggest change that we're seeing is that it's people, and it's probably you lot, I'm going to say, who are playing with these platforms that are actually really affecting how advertisers are using them. So I think the thing I'd always wished was just how it all that always changes, and yet there's some fundamentals which I guess I tried to sort of make a nod to as I went through it, which will always remain the same, which is you always want to put people first and try and connect with people and understand what makes them tick. And the other thing is you always want to try and make sure that your brand is distinctive and it's well known. But aside from that, the world it'll always change and it'll always evolve, and that's what makes it a particularly interesting and creative industry to go into.
Right, perfect. I think we'll end it there. But like I said, if anyone, I'll be speaking to everyone anyway. If anyone is really interested in getting into the advertising industry and would like to speak to Chris privately, just let me know, and then we can arrange and make it happen. But Chris, thank you very much for your time, and everyone that attended, thank you very much.
Sure.
And everyone's free to go and enjoy their evening, I guess. And Chris will
Have a great
catch up tomorrow, and I'll get some
Perfect.
feedback tomorrow.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.